And of course, there are loud noises in the background as soon as I start filming. What is up, guys? This is Intelitech Studios here, and today is Friday, November 6th, 2020. It is currently 4:21:07 p.m. because you can see I have a little seconds counter. So you can see exactly when I was recording this video, so that way if any new information comes out, you can see that I did not see it whenever I was creating this video. Now, my 2020 election prediction, I posted it a couple days ago. It was on the day of the election. It was on the 3rd. And that actually was a prediction. If you look in the corner of the screen, that prediction was all the way back in August, before any debates, before Trump got coronavirus, before Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away, before the Hunter Biden email scandal, before all of these things that happened to possibly sway and shift the direction of this election. Yeah. So before all that happened, that was my prediction, and I stuck by that prediction. The one discrepancy I will say is that in the video, I didn't do a good enough job at explaining the districts, because my prediction does show, but again, I didn't do a very good job at articulating it in this video, because basically what I was trying to say was that Nebraska's 2nd district would go Biden and Maine's 2nd district would go Trump, but I was basically just like, oh, well, it doesn't matter because we're looking at electoral vote counts, so if it's one on each side, it's a wash. That doesn't look good, because that made it sound like I'm saying like all of Nebraska will go Trump and all of Maine will go Biden, and that's not what I was trying to say. So Nebraska 2nd district and Maine 2nd district I did predict would essentially be switched, and that is what happened in the election. So those were called. And so right now we are currently sitting at Trump 214, Biden 253. Now the confusing thing is, every network is agreeing that Trump's at 214. For some reason, Alaska has not been called, despite Trump being currently at 63%. Or I think, actually, no, I think it was at 53. Well, either way, Trump has a strong majority in Alaska. He's going to win Alaska. I don't believe any Democrats ever won Alaska, because I'm pretty sure if we had an election where a Democrat could have won Alaska, I'm pretty sure it was before Alaska was a state. So as far as I know, there's no indicators that show that Alaska is going to go to Biden, so we'll just get that out of the way. That's the only non-swing state that for some reason is still not called as of now, but obviously that's going to go to Trump. But here's where we're at right now. All the solid yellow states have not been called. All the pale yellow states are ones that certain networks have called, but others have not. It is not a general consensus. The Associated Press and Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden, yet many other networks still have not called Arizona, because Arizona is the one state out of all of these states, again, all of these swing states in the lower 48, that still have votes coming in that are pro-Trump, or at least, they're more pro-Trump than they are pro-Biden. But the problem is that Biden is still at a majority lead in Arizona. He's still beyond 50%. Trump is below 50%. Last I checked, Trump was at 48 something, Biden's at 50 something. And the majority, I believe 90 to 92, something like that, percent of the vote is in Arizona. And again, because of the pandemic, these are not precincts reporting. These are actual vote estimates. These are estimates of how many votes they expect to come in. These are not precincts where they know exactly how many votes. They are still waiting for precincts. And in the case of all of these states, the main votes that are still coming in are from cities and from suburban areas. Now, people are thinking, oh, well, that means that Biden's trying to steal the election. No, because rural areas were counted first on election day, because those areas are smaller and have less population. Therefore, they're going to be easier to count. That's why Trump had a huge lead on election day. This is what is known as the blue shift or the red mirage, where rural areas that are known to benefit Trump and benefit Republicans in general are going to be what reports first on election day. That's why on election day, we saw Trump ahead in Wisconsin, ahead in Michigan, ahead in Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Iowa, Ohio, all the swing states, literally all of them, with the exception of Nevada. Once we started getting results for Nevada, it immediately flipped blue. But early on, Florida was looking blue. Ohio was looking blue as the early Democratic vote came in, but very, very quickly it switched to being red. And in the case of Ohio and Florida and Iowa, they stayed red. Same thing with Texas. Texas was blue for a couple hours, but it turned red after we saw a lot more votes come in. Democrats were hoping to flip Texas. I made the prediction that Texas is not going to flip blue this year. In fact, it's going to be a little bit more steady for Trump. And right now, it's looking that 2020 is very much mirroring the 2018 race between Ted Cruz and Beto O'Rourke, where Democrats lost only by a couple points. Texas has still narrowed up much more than it has in 2016, in 2008, in 2012. All those elections, Texas has been a solid block for Republicans. Texas was still a battleground state this election. Make no mistake of that. But ultimately, it did go to Trump, which has tightened up this race significantly. If Biden had won Texas, this video would not have been made. There would have been no point. Biden would have already won the election by now. So, same story with Florida. Because after Arizona was called, if Florida had gone blue, which so far is the only thing that I projected that didn't go the way I expected it to. And Florida actually has swung pretty significantly to the right, and Georgia has swung pretty significantly to the left. So basically, if you think of my election prediction as a dartboard, and I'm throwing darts, basically my dart went a little bit too low and hit Florida when it should have hit Georgia, because right now, Georgia is too close to call, but Georgia is favoring Biden. A lot of the votes that are coming in now, currently in Georgia, are in the Atlanta suburbs, the areas that will overwhelmingly help Joe Biden. So, if I had to make a projection based on the state of the race right now, I think that every pretty much state that's leading is going to hold. So, right now, if we take off all these no calls, again, this is the last look you'll see of this. These are all the states that currently have not been called. Again, solid yellow are ones that have not been called, period. And the light beigeish yellow are the ones that certain networks have called. Because the Associated Press has called Arizona and Election HQ has called Pennsylvania. No networks have put both in Biden's column, and some networks have put neither in Biden's column. So that's what's really confusing about this race as it stands right now. There are some estimates that have Biden at 250 something, and then 253, and then there are some networks that have him at 264, and there's some that have him at 273. So obviously that's a pretty big difference, because that's the difference between winning and not winning the election. If all of the earlier, because last night, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia were still leaning red, Nevada and Arizona were still leaning blue. If that was the case, Biden would have won with exactly 270 if all of those states held. Right now, it's looking like it's swinging in Biden's direction, which is what the experts predicted and what I predicted as well. But a lot of people weren't really all that aware of how this election was going to go down because of the large influx of absentee and mail-in ballots. So that is something that you guys have to keep in mind. That is why we saw Trump doing very well on election day, yet Biden is now narrowing the lead. Now, going all the way through yesterday, the question was, okay, so we know what's going to happen, but is Biden's lead with mail-in and absentee votes going to be enough to overcome the initial influx of Trump votes on election day? Or in English, is it going to swing back to Biden? Or is it going to stay with Trump? Is Trump going to hold on to those states? And is he going to clinch Pennsylvania, possibly even Arizona, and potentially squeak out a victory in this election? Well, right now, it's looking like all the signs are pointing to Donald Trump will lose this election. He will not be reelected president of the United States. And Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. will be president-elect, 46th president of the United States. That's what all the signs are pointing to right now. Now, 2020 is crazy. Anything can change. But right now, as it stands, Joe Biden is at a strong favorite to win the election. And that strong is very, very strong. Very short of calling the election. Now, again, I'm not a media network, so I can afford to make calls. I can afford to make state calls right now and see if I was wrong based on now that we have actual voting data coming in. So now, if I'm going to predict things, and I'll have these be in different hues so you can see the states that have been called versus the states that still, as of now, have not been called. Alaska is going red. So basically, I'm going to put all the ones that I'm about to characterize as lean margins, even though, just so that way it's light enough to where you can still tell what color it is, but still see that it's not something that's been called. It's what I'm predicting is going to happen. Alaska is going red. Arizona is going blue. That's the wrong color. Arizona is going blue. Arizona has been called by many networks, but right now, and what I said I think I said this in the video, but I could be wrong. But if so, I did a very poor job at articulating this. But basically, I predicted that Arizona was going to go blue before Florida was. So, and that's right now what it seems to be happening. It looks like Georgia's going blue before Florida is. Perhaps North Carolina could even be going blue before Florida has. And that is something that we are seeing. So again, if I'm hitting a dartboard, then it looks like right now that I hit Georgia or I hit Florida when I was supposed to hit Georgia. Because, I mean, which to be fair, a lot of the things we've seen in the past, based off previous trends and based off of Biden doing much better with older voters, all the signs are pointing to Biden squeaking out a victory in Florida. And all of those signs did come to fruition. Biden is doing better with older voters as of right now. We won't know the full numbers until all the election results are in. Because people are calling this election and saying, oh no, the polls were so wrong. Guys, the polls were not wrong. We are not yet able to judge this election based off the polls because we don't have all the results in. Even in the states that have been called, we still don't have all the results in. It's not until December when the Electoral College meets and officially certifies the results, potentially even January when we actually have the next president sworn in, whether it's Trump or Biden. What we need to do is wait until then before we can start actually comparing the margins to polls and actually seeing how this election played out versus the projections before this race started, because we can't judge the polls and we can't judge the margins in each of these states until we have the entire picture, guys. There are people saying the polls are wrong. There are people saying that the polls were incorrect and that they were vastly wrong. We don't know that yet. All of the vote is not in yet. All we know right now is that we are just judging this race based off of the votes that we have in so far. And we know that in the swing states, it is very, very tight, and it is going to be pretty crazy of an election. So, again, now that I've got that tidbit out of the way, we can go to the rest of the states that I'm going to project. Arizona is going to hold for Biden. Georgia, right now, the Atlanta and the Atlanta suburbs, overwhelmingly pro-Democrat and pro-Biden. Biden does have a very small lead in here, but I think that Georgia will ultimately break for Biden. I think that out of all the Biden states, Georgia is the first one to break for Trump. So keep that in mind. Arizona right now seems to be more solid than Nevada is, strangely enough, but I think Nevada is going to get a little bit more of a widening lead. Right now, Biden's lead in Nevada is widening to a pretty good degree. I still think that Nevada is going to vote for Biden to about the extent, if not a little bit more than they voted for Hillary Clinton. It's going to be around that same margin. It's entirely possible that Nevada does give Biden less of an edge than it gave to Clinton. That is a possibility, but right now it'll be around that same margin. That's what the vote totals are showing, and that's ultimately what I project. But margins effectively don't matter in terms of, you're calling it. But the problem is that I projected that Florida would be a tilt or a lean state depending on how big turnout is and depending on which way that turnout goes. So a shift of only about 1 or 2 points, which is a very real shift, just going from my prediction to election day, especially considering it was 3 months. But again, my prediction would have been the same if I had actually made a fresh video on the 3rd. Which is why I uploaded that old video, because I was curious to see if that old projection would hold, or if I would have to scrap it and change my mind, or at the very least make it half of a video and put my updated predictions afterwards. Since it was basically the same, I went ahead and uploaded that video. But again, so yes, while it being a tilt state did flip it into Trump's column, it still was a close margin. But again, since it was the closest state, it was the one to flip for Trump first. And right now it looks like Trump has broadened his base in Florida. He has actually grown his base. The question of this election was, will Donald Trump grow his base, or is he losing too much of his voters? Right now, because of the record turnout that we're seeing, it looks like that both Biden and Trump have broadened their bases. Biden has expanded on the Clinton coalition, which is what we expected. But the thing that was up in the air was, will this turnout also benefit Trump? Will we see more people jump into the Trump column, like, for example, we saw in 2004, where George W. Bush got more votes during his re-election? Now, in that case, Kerry's vote count was actually down, and that was the only modern election where the Democrats lost the popular vote. So, could that happen again? Right now, it's looking like both sides had record breaking turnout, and that is swinging this election in kind of a lopsided way. We're seeing some of the Sunbelt states like Arizona and Georgia flip to the left and get more pro Biden, and we're seeing states like Ohio and Florida flip more to the right, as Ohio and Iowa really haven't changed much since 2016. They right now, based off the current numbers, it looks like Trump is winning by about the same that he's won in 2016, which is definitely impressive that he was able to hold on to those voters. Now, to be fair, we don't know if it's the same voters. He very well could have lost those voters to Biden, but then more Trump voters came up to basically fill in their place. We don't know that yet. But what we do know is that he overperformed in those states as of right now. So again, Georgia. Georgia right now is lean blue. Not what I expected. Basically, again, if I had thrown a dart, my dart landed on Florida when it should have landed on Arizona in terms of being a Biden state. So right now, that looks like that is playing out. Right now, North Carolina. North Carolina's vote count is pretty much entirely stalled, but Trump has a pretty decent lead in here right now, and it looks like that North Carolina will be going red this election cycle. If I can pick the darn right color. So that's tilt. I wanted lean. Did it again. There we go, lean. So North Carolina, a state that I projected pretty much accurately, because I projected that North Carolina would be tilt, lean-ish Trump, and that's pretty much what happened. So North Carolina does look like it will go to Donald Trump. And then next we have Nevada, and finally the grab bag of Pennsylvania. So Nevada, again, that will go to Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. His lead in Nevada is expanding right now. He's doing very well in Nevada. He's on track to win Nevada. And again, if you take away Georgia, if Biden holds Arizona and holds Nevada, basically the congressional districts had decided this race, because if Biden had lost the 2nd district in Nebraska, he'd be at 269. And if everything else went to Trump, we'd be looking at an electoral college deadlock. But thankfully, the 2nd district did go to Nebraska. The 2nd district did go to Joe Biden. The 2nd district of Maine did go to Trump, as I expected. But that also means that if Biden can't flip Pennsylvania, if new Trump votes come in and he can't hold Pennsylvania, he can't hold Georgia, which right now the signs do look like he's going to win both of those. But if something crazy happens, and by crazy I mean more Trump votes come in, and he is somehow able to backflip Pennsylvania and Georgia, which I don't see considering they just now flipped blue, then Biden would be at exactly 270 if he holds Nevada and Arizona. So Biden right now, very strong favorite to win this election. So now, again, I'll reinstate Georgia. That right now is, again, leaning towards Biden. So again, leaning towards Trump, leaning towards Biden. Very simple. Next, finally, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania is lean Biden. Pennsylvania, for the longest of time throughout election night, Donald Trump had an 11-point lead in Pennsylvania. He has since lost the entirety of that lead. Joe Biden is now leading in Pennsylvania. I forgot the exact number off the top of my head. In fact, we can look at this. We can look at this right now and see what we are at. You can see I was looking up the betting odds as well. So we can see right now, Pennsylvania, super tight race. They are both at 49. If you round, Biden is at 50%. Trump is at 49%. Very tight in Pennsylvania. In Nevada, you can see this lead has gained, well, pretty heavily. It's at least compared to all these other states, it's still a relatively small margin. Joe Biden is at rounded up to 50%. Trump is at 48% in Nevada. Right now, we can see that's a 2-point lead. If that holds, Biden wins Nevada. I think that that's going to hold. Nevada's voted for Democrats since, well, either way, it's been quite a few elections. I think Nevada went to Bush in 2004. Obama got it in '08, and Democrats haven't lost Nevada since. Polls predicted that Nevada was, again, I mentioned this in my last video, polls predicted that Nevada was going to go to Trump in 2016. Clinton ended up winning that state. Was that prediction perhaps 4 years early? We will see. But as of right now, Biden will be winning Nevada. And again, Georgia, razor thin margins, both deadlocked at 42%. It says 100% of precincts are reporting, but additional votes may yet be counted. It's entirely possible that they will call Georgia very soon, but it'll be difficult to call considering they are pretty much deadlocked. So right now, it looks like Georgia is pretty much a dead heat. Biden is leading by barely 0.1%. We see 49.34 for Donald Trump, 49.42 for Joe Biden. And we can also see Joe Jorgensen at 1.24% as well. Yes, we can see this is definitely a crazy race. Florida, you can see the lead that Trump has been able to amass in Florida is very impressive on the part of the president. We can see that the president has 51% of the vote to Joe Biden's 48%. That's only a 3-point lead, but that is still a pretty decisive lead in a state like Florida that has been close every single election in modern times. So again, you can see I was a little bit off. I basically was supposed to project Georgia and not Florida, and I projected that Florida would go blue, Georgia would go red, and it looks like those states are flip-flopped. So again, like I said before, if you think about it in the perspective of a dartboard, my dart that was supposed to hit Georgia went a little bit low and hit Florida when it should have hit Georgia, as far as my Biden dart. So again, North Carolina is closer than I thought it was. 99% reporting. If you round it, it's 49 Biden, 50 Trump. So who knows? Maybe we could see, because North Carolina is pretty much halted counting right now. Or actually, no, are they still counting in North Carolina? I'm not quite sure. Maybe Biden could flip North Carolina, but I don't see it happening at this point. It is very, very close, but I think that the newer votes that are going to be, I don't know from exactly which areas they're still counting in North Carolina, unlike in the other states. I think that's going to stay Trump, but it wouldn't surprise me if it went to Biden. But at this point, I think that that's going to stay with Trump. I think we are at the point now where every state that's leading for the candidate is going to be clinched by that candidate. So Trump will win Alaska and North Carolina. Joe Biden will win Georgia, Nevada, and Pennsylvania. That's where the race looks like right now. And we can see every other state's been called. The Trump campaign has attempted to try to get a recount in Wisconsin. Right now, it doesn't appear that has happened. What the Trump campaign has been granted, though, is in Pennsylvania. They were granted the access to watch from 6 feet away, socially distanced. Poll watchers and poll workers actually count the remaining ballots just to make sure there is election integrity. I don't exactly know the legal validity of partisan workers actually watching over poll watchers, but nevertheless, Trump was granted for his supporters to be able to look over the polls in Pennsylvania, and so far we have seen no evidence from the president that there is voter fraud. At the very least, if there is evidence, he has yet to demonstrate it or show evidence for it. It is possible that there may be some voter fraud. That's always a possibility, but we've seen there have been numerous studies where, for example, there was one university that did studies on voter fraud and found that in every election in this century, meaning going all the way back to 2000, there were only 10 cases of confirmed voter impersonation. There was a story that broke recently where there was a former roommate that actually took her former roommate's absentee ballots and voted for her in the election. But that issue was resolved. It was only just a simple one case, and that kind of shows an example of why people speculating that voter fraud is an issue isn't as much of an issue as people are saying it out to be, because you're talking about people going out of their way to cast only one fraudulent ballot that would ultimately have very little effect on a national election, and yet would face felony charges as a result of that. It doesn't make any sense that most people would go that route. But in that one case, the girl was, I believe, punished for it, and the girl whose ballot was falsely cast on her behalf was able to get that ballot voided and was able to recast her ballot properly. So, in that one anecdotal scenario, the issue did get resolved. So, it'll be interesting to see how the effects of mail-in voting will affect the election afterwards, as far as, potentially, whenever the results get certified in December by the Electoral College, we'll see if there's any anomalies there. But I don't expect there to be any real issues with voter fraud. I do think that this election is potentially more likely to have voter fraud due to the amount of mail-in ballots than past elections, but I don't think the difference is going to be enough to swing any of these states. I don't think that that's the case. We do see that Wisconsin, Michigan, and even Pennsylvania are a lot tighter right now than polls suggested, and that's about what I expected. I didn't necessarily expect that these would be landslides for Joe Biden, considering that he doesn't have really, there's not really a lot of indicators showing that he was going to entirely sweep the country, and that's why my sort of election prediction was very conservative, as far as not conservative in terms of leaning Republican, but conservative in terms of how much I think the Biden and the anti-Trump effect has affected this race. And ultimately, the election is a lot tighter than some other people projected, but a lot closer to what I projected. Again, so far, the only state that I've gotten wrong is I called Florida instead of Georgia. That's the only thing that I've gotten wrong about this race so far. And we'll see if anything else changes. So again, going back to the map, we can see that if everything holds, where is... There it is. So, if everything holds and every state that each candidate is currently leading in holds, then you will see Trump winning 232 electoral votes to Joe Biden's 306, which coincidentally enough is the exact same electoral vote count from 2016, only reversed. In 2016, Donald Trump got 306 electoral votes and Hillary Clinton got 232. So it would definitely be an interesting sort of reflection on this election if the electoral vote count was exactly accurate to 2016, only flipped the other direction. That would definitely be a very funny thing regarding this election. So, at least in my opinion, maybe it's not all that exciting, but I just think it's funny how it's the exact same count, only in reverse. So, because again, according to my projection, I projected that Trump would have won that Trump would have won Georgia, and Biden would have won Florida, which would have put the race at 319 Biden to 219 Trump. Right now, it looks like the race is going to be the exact opposite. It looks like we are going to see Trump with 232 and Biden with 306 electoral votes. That's the state of the race right now. Obviously, go ahead and check up on the election yourself after this video, and we're all watching this together, so we'll see if something changes. But a snapshot of the election right now puts Trump at 214 called votes, yet 232 projected votes, and Biden at 254 electoral votes, but projected to 306 electoral votes. If that happens, then Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. will be the president-elect, the 46th president of the United States of America. So, if that's how this race plays out from here on out, then that will be the result that we see will be this map here, with these states filling solid once they are finally called. So, what are your guys' thoughts about what is going on with this election? Definitely is pretty crazy. If you voted, then let me know if you voted down below. You don't have to disclose who you voted for unless you don't want to. And I'm very, very happy that my last video on this election got very positive reactions. There weren't people arguing in the comments. Everyone was very nice and very happy and, looking positive onto this election. And I really appreciate that. Hopefully that holds with this video as well. And who knows, maybe after this, I'll actually start up that political channel that I never got around to doing, or maybe I'll just continue it here on Intellitext Videos. It depends on what you guys want, because I kind of like the idea of just having the channel where I just do everything that I like to do, and I don't have to worry about putting it on different channels. But I know there's some people that prefer to keep everything separate. There's not really any official rule as far as YouTube goes, but it does make things a little more organized, but also a little bit more tricky on my part to keep everything together. So, plus there's the fact that if I start up a new channel, I have to go all and apply for monetization all over again for that particular channel. I've considered opening up a Patreon. I'm not quite sure how you guys feel about that. I've had many of my friends tell me I should open a Patreon. So who knows? Maybe if I get 10 likes on this video, I'll open a Patreon. I don't know. How about that? Anyway, guys, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you found it a little bit entertaining, a little bit informative. And again, what did you guys think was going to happen this election? And again, it's hard to make projections considering that these light states have not been called yet. Maybe I'll make another video once every state's been officially called. Who knows? But as of right now, this is the state of the race, and we will see how it plays out. Anyway, guys, this is Intelitech Studios. I say that a lot in these videos, don't I? I keep trying to end the video and going off on a tangent. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good one. Peace.